I want to talk to you a little bit about sketching before we go outside to sketch on location. And we're in my studio now, and I wanted to show some of the tools I use before we go outside and some techniques and thoughts before we go. So here's a few things I use. One is Prismacolor. I like it. It goes to a pretty dark value, and it is also not, you can't erase it, which I love, so you can't go backwards. This is layout pencil, so it's just a soft graphite. I use that sometimes, not as much. A brush pen, which I like because of the tip, so it gives you a nice choice of going a little fat, going thin. Gives you some choice in your line work. And the Prismacolor can go light like that, and go pretty dark value, and graphite the same. So sometimes I use a combination. Sometimes I might even sketch with with a pen like that, get some sort of gesture or rhythm, and then follow through whatever with graphite or Prisma, or I may even start with some sort of shapes with the Sharpie. Sharpie would work, it just doesn't have as fine a line. But start with something, like that, and then come in with maybe some opportunities to get some variety in your stroke, in your mark making. So that's another option too, is come in with those. Okay, so that's the idea. Here's a couple sketches I did out on location. I spent a few days for this class out for the drawing lessons, and I used Prismacolor and brush pen and ballpoint pen, even Copic markers, everything that I had mentioned for my tools. These here were done on an iPad because I found it to be the best way to show my process. This is the first one that I stopped to draw. These probably total time, this is speeded up a little bit, but total time is 5 minutes, I would think, at the most. I didn't time myself, but I think about 5 minutes is about right. You can see here, starting with the big shapes, the big overall form, as I look at how the trees gesture and rhythm and trying to get variation. Another big thing is organizing the chaos. There's a lot going on. So I don't want to manicure it. I don't want to take that too far. I just want to organize it into some sort of pleasing shape. I'm not a camera, but I am still trying to be very true to the scene. Okay, and here's the second one where I'm taking a look at that and trying to grab that one on the left. Same thing, start the same process. This is probably most similar to Copic markers, because I'm putting in maybe a light at the beginning, and then once I have that and have some confidence with what my shape is, I can come over a little bit darker. And you can see me build here, build the form, variation in line, not the same on the same side. One side a little lighter, one darker, one thicker, one thinner, and everything has variation and interest. And then also anchoring it to the ground. Once I get down to there, it's making sure it has a plane to stand up. Now what I'd like to do is I'm now going to take this image and analyze what I was thinking and what parts I was looking for as I was drawing. I think that's probably the most useful, so we can all try to make better shapes. First of all, we're going to start with this tree, okay? And show the differences, what I'm seeing and what I'm especially taking care for. One is this distance. Look at the energy, how that and then the distance of this versus the distance of that. Okay? We want those all to be different lengths, and that movement is going to show a really nice rhythm to this tree. Now if we get those all the same length, where this end of the tree goes that long and that end of the tree goes that long, I didn't even do it the same, but if those all go the same length, that's going to be really boring. Now, nature has far more variety than that, so we have to look for that variety. Okay? So that's one thing. The other is, look at the gesture of the top of the tree here. Especially cypress kind of go a wedge, and we'll go into other trees here, but see how it's kind of a wedge shape, a triangle shape? You know, we can all draw triangles, so let's look for that. And then also notice how this is going down at an angle, okay? This is not the same scene. Let's do what's wrong. If I make that shape, equilateral triangle, make it face straight up, make that angle the same as that angle the same as that angle the same. Crooked martini glass or something, but it's certainly not an interesting shape for this tree. Okay, so let's look for that. Also, I know we're dealing more in drawing, but even that slight value of, you know, light is coming from here. It wasn't sunlit. You know, you saw the scene. It was overcast, foggy day, which is typical here. And then underneath, look, it's darker. Just that difference. But you saw when I was drawing it, you can even rewatch, as when I was drawing it, that I started with one value because I wanted the silhouette shape to be interesting. And once I have that, then I can start building inside. Now, there's also a lot of variety in my line. So if you notice on here, I've got a darker line. So here, on that side is lighter. If we can get variety where this is darker, and this is lighter, and this is darker, and this is lighter, as I work down the tree, I'm trying to make, my mark making has a purpose, not just I'm going all the way down the tree and it's going to be like that. That's going to be boring. So you can see it throughout where, you know, if I can go with a darker value there, maybe a little, you know, stretch on that side, and then as it curls, you know, comes down and gets darker there, that's going to have a lot more interest as you go down the tree to your eye than if both sides have equal weight. And we're talking line weight here. So if both sides are like that, that's not as interesting. Okay? Now I'm also carrying that through in these branches. But this is also to do with how the branches bend and get different values. You can see this in the branches. So you can go a little darker, a little lighter, and it's just a little dance that your eye gets to do as it moves around this whole branch and creates more interest. Okay? Now, as you see, I'm moving forward. I'm not erasing. I'm not, you know, oh, I didn't like how that is. Like, look at this. That was my initial drawing right here coming across on the tree. Well, I think to my eye, it starts to look like more of a bend in a tree, but it was just an extra mark that I ended up leaving. This little information around here, those are just little extra marks that were in there, but I keep them. If I clean all that up, I'm going to quickly see that it's going to be manicured. Now, there's a million more branches in this if I wanted to continue. I mean, there were branches, you know, coming all over this place. But there's an eventual point that this could be interesting, but I took it to the point where I had some understanding of how the branches go, and it didn't end up just looking hairy, right? And so you need to make a decision at what point do you have the gesture, do you have the interest that this tree has without overdoing it? And only you will know. It can be different for every tree. Don't think like, oh, it's 6 branches or 5 branches or whatever. Okay, so let's take a look at this tree and look how it's different. Now this tree, on the other hand, has got all the energy going this way. But do you see how it's counterbalanced that way? Not only to keep the tree standing, but that's the interesting gesture. Now the way I just drew that, as you notice, that's gesture. That's not rhythm. But it does have rhythm. And you can see with my mark making that how this, you know, curls in here. I'm finding rhythm on the outside edge. And that's helping create some interest there. Same thing with the top. You know, I started with a silhouetted shape and then built within that. Under here, you may be asking, why are these branches darker under here? Well, it's an umbrella in these type of trees, so it's shading the top far more than the bottom. I want to reiterate a point. Drawing a head without neck or shoulders doesn't really make sense, right? And same with a tree. Give it a ground. Give it something that's connecting. Give it weight and a place. And just this little detail puts it in an environment, okay? I followed the same thing with these branches, you know, a little lighter and darker value, not quite to the extreme of the other. One more thing I should add is this. Why is that up there? Well, It's speed. When I'm outside, I'm trying to work as fast as possible. As you can see, these are quick drawings that I'm not fiddling with every detail, nor do I want to. There's a time and a place for everything, but I will eventually get to paint, and this is more for understanding. So what I do when I'm using pens is I might use 3 different values. Like I was talking about, the Copic markers can do this. I might be doing it in Prismacolor. I might be using it with a variety where I use the brush pen to do this underside, and then I'm using Prismacolor or something to do the top, just for a value change. But on the iPad, the program's called Procreate. I really like it. And what I recommend is just make 3 color swatches. A light value, a mid value, and dark value. Similar to when we get into painting with Portland grays, which I'm a big fan of painting. But then I'm not trying to re-grab every time. They're there, and I can just grab those 3 values. So everything you see in here was made with those 3 values, and mostly with the 2 values on the right. And every time you're making marks, remember you're cultivating your sense of arrangement. You're looking at the environment, and that's your departure point. That's your launching pad, because in the end, you want to find your own way to draw. When you see a tree, that it's the way you see a tree, and not the second best way somebody else sees it.